And welcome to Off the Couch, where psychology meets everyday life. I'm Dr. Greg Cason. I'm a psychologist, and we're going to talk about all kinds of good things in the world of psychology and current research. I am here with my good friend and producer, Brian Gomez.
Happy Monday, you guys.
And we have on the board, you can't see him, but he's there. It's Tony. Hi, Tony.
Well, hello.
Welcome. Today on Off the Couch, did the trial of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard defame mental illness? Does the size of your student loan impact the size of your grades? Were you hissing about Amber Heard and Johnny Depp? Was that what was going on?
It was the size of your...
You said, and the size of your... And I was like, where's he going with this?
Oh.
Sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, we're going to talk about the size of your student loans.
Okay.
And in the news, what can South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem teach us about tolerance? Okay, but first up, I want to talk about something that just came out today. Today, when we're just filming this, is Miss USA 2023 Noella Voigt of Utah announced that she is resigning her title, citing mental health reasons. She made this announcement on Instagram, and she was a very wonderful Miss USA, and I don't know the particulars. She was an advocate for anti-bullying. She was an advocate for dating violence awareness and prevention. She also advocated for immigration rights and reform and shedding the light on her roots, as she was the very first Venezuelan American woman to win Miss USA. I mean, really quite a beautiful woman. And she said, here's a quote from her: "I realize this may come as a shock to many. Never compromise your physical and mental well-being. Our health is our wealth. Time to write the next chapter." And this was kind of a cool thing. I thought, I mean, not that she's having to resign or that she has mental health issues, but that she put it out that way. She could have said any other thing. She could have said, "I'm resigning for personal reasons." She could have said she had other opportunities. She could have said, "I have family to attend to." So I was really touched that she actually put this out publicly, much as we saw with the gymnast Simone Biles, which we saw do that as well when she had mental health issues and dropped out of the Olympics.
And there's been a lot of different athletes, too, from different fields that have been taking breaks and everything like that for mental health reasons.
And I think it's a first. I mean, we're seeing this in the last maybe 10 years. Did we see it much before that? I don't remember this at all. The people never said about mental health. I mean, we knew it. They'd say they have exhaustion, or they'd say they're taking a break for personal reasons, but they would never say the actual word. So I think her final act of awareness and her final act of compassion is talking about her own issues. So I thought that was kind of nice.
That's cool. It makes her even more relatable in that sense, where people are going to love her even more for just that reason.
I would imagine.
I would hope so.
I would imagine so. And, I think we also breaks a little bit of the stereotype that when you're very beautiful, you don't suffer. When you're very beautiful, you don't have mental health issues. And in fact, we know that's not true. People who are beautiful suffer just as much as everybody else. Well, not in all things. We can talk about that another day. We'll talk about pretty privilege another day. But this is an example of she's beautiful both outside and inside. So I thought that was kind of nice. So let's talk about this week in psychology. Hey, you guys, what do you think the craziest trial on TV was? Let me give you some choices. Was it the Fani Willis and Nathan Wade trial? If you don't know that, that's the case brought by the defendants of the Georgia election conspiracy trial that sought to disqualify Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis, and because she had an affair with her lead prosecutor, Nathan Wade. I guess neither of you followed this. Did you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it was salacious and awful. And basically, she had an affair with her lead prosecutor that she's on the same side of. So I didn't understand how that made her unfit to be a
Yeah, I
prosecutor.
didn't see that either.
I mean,
I didn't find that an issue, but I mean, it may be not completely ethical, but I didn't feel it's going to make a decision one way or the other.
I think
as a trial.
I couldn't see how it would make a decision one way or the other. If anything, the defense had a kind of a leg up, because what if they got in a fight and things fell apart?
Right.
So I never understood why they were doing this, except to just try to delay
That's
get
the
her
key.
kicked off.
Both.
Yeah.
Both. That's usually how the legal games go.
Right.
So there was that trial. There was the O.J. Simpson trial for the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. I think I watched every day of that trial for some reason. I was in grad school, and it made a little bit of a break.
I think everybody in the country was tuned into that. It was the biggest thing going on at that time.
It really was. Or is it currently the current trial of former president for election interference, our former president for election interference, by paying off a porn star to silence her before the election? These are some salacious trials, but the answer is none of the above.
What?
The worst trial, the most watched trial, the craziest trial on TV. No guesses? No guesses?
Drum roll, please.
It was the defamation trial of Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. How about that? So, Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard. Let me go through this. That was a trial held in 2022. I think most people might remember that. I tried to tune out, but I couldn't get away from it. That ruled on allegations of defamation. They brought allegations against each other. They were married American actors. I think most people know them. What did Johnny Depp do? He was
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Pirates of the Caribbean.
I mean, a lot more, but
And
that's
a lot.
one of the biggest.
And
staples.
21 Jump Street.
Edward Scissorhands.
Edward
Yeah.
Scissorhands, the most wonderful movie.
Oh, Into the Woods too. Oh yeah, I love that movie.
Yeah. And what did Amber Heard do?
Aquaman.
Oh, she did Aquaman.
Oh yeah. Oh wow.
Good for her.
How can we? Wow.
Well, Depp filed a complaint of defamation against the defendant Heard. Thank you, Tony. He just put up photos, and for those watching at home, he put up a complaint for defamation against defendant Heard, claiming $50 million in damages. Heard filed counter claims against Depp, claiming $100 million in damages. You gotta love that. He wants sues her for 50, she sues him back for 100. So in May 2016, at an early stage in their divorce proceedings, Amber Heard claimed that Depp had abused her physically in a newspaper op-ed, which he denied. She did that December 2018. Depp's claims refer to the 2018 December op-ed by Heard in the Washington Post, which is a major newspaper, a major respectable newspaper. It's not like a gossip rag. And Depp claimed Heard caused new damage to his reputation and career by stating that she had spoken up against sexual violence, and that 2 years ago she became a public figure representing domestic abuse. So basically making him the object of scorn. So Heard counterclaimed that Depp had defamed her in statements that he made in the Daily Mail in 2020. And throughout the trial, Depp's legal team sought to disprove Heard's domestic abuse allegations and to demonstrate that she had been the instigator rather than the victim of intimate partner violence. That's domestic violence to the rest of you. And Heard's lawyers defended the op-ed, claiming it to be factual and protected by the First Amendment. So the trial results, what do you think? Does anybody remember that? Oh, I remember. Yeah. So Depp's complaint, Heard was with Depp, Johnny Depp suing Amber Heard. Heard was found liable in all three matters of defamation raised. Depp was awarded $10 million of his $50 million claim in compensatory damage and $5 million in punitive damages, reduced to $350,000 per state limit. So he got some money. I mean, $50 million is quite a bit. Heard's counterclaims, though, Depp was heard when Amber Heard sued Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp was found liable in one of three matters of defamation raised, and Heard was awarded $2 million of the $100 claimed, $100 million claimed. I mean, this is just craziness, isn't it? The amounts of money, the craziness that went on, they basically continued to abuse each other, and in compensatory damage and $0 in punitive damages, basically said that she didn't get hurt. I mean, Aquaman probably did more to hurt her. I don't know. I'm sorry. That was a terrible joke, and I apologize to everybody. Okay. Why it matters for us. You think, why are they talking about this on a psychology show? Well, it matters because the trial was live streamed globally on YouTube and viewed more than 1 billion times. It was the most watched trial in history, which blew me away because that's more watched than OJ. This was more watched than what we're seeing now with Donald Trump's trial, even though it's just sketches coming at us. This is more watched than just about anything we can think of, and that's because it was streamed on YouTube, and streaming goes worldwide. So the legal team sought to undermine both their testimonies using mental health experts to testify. Just think of this. You're both bringing in mental health experts to say how crazy the other one is, or how, what you're doing is really just an expression of mental health. I don't know. So they talked about borderline and histrionic personality disorder in Amber Heard. And if you don't know what those are what we call the dramatic erratic personality disorders. That borderline is basically inability to manage emotion, and histrionic is basically overly expressive emotion. So it's all over the place. You certainly see this can be very advantageous in the acting world, but probably not so much in the relationship world. Johnny Depp they talked about paranoia and substance abuse disorder. Again, this is not very helpful in the relationship world. And the two of them together, I can see how, if indeed he's paranoid and has substance abuse issues, that can actually make just sort of a systematic thing. People who have borderline and histrionic personality disorder, it can make it much worse. I liken this to kind of electricity, and all this electricity, emotional electricity that's coming out of Amber Heard, instead of Johnny Depp being able to ground the electricity, he's just putting it right back on her, so it's going to explode even more. So how did this affect people's views of mental health? Well, some students got together and decided to do a study. The interesting thing about this study and the next one that we'll talk about is they were both done for no money. And I've gotten some criticism on YouTube because people are saying, why are we spending millions of dollars to do these studies? If we look, and they usually say right in the study, they'll say right in the paper how much they were paid or where the grant came from, etc. Everything in psychology is very disclosed. These students did it out of the goodness and probably interest of their own hearts. I thought it was a rather interesting thing because they decided to say, what effect did viewing these experts who, instead of being supportive, were basically being used as weapons in a trial, what effect did that have on viewers' views of mental health? And the study was done by students at the University of Surrey, that's in England, United Kingdom, and it's published in the journal BJ Psych Bulletin, British Journal Psych Bulletin, I imagine. And because the trial was so widely seen, the student researchers wanted to assess the impact of the trial on perceptions of the reported mental health of Amber Heard and Johnny Depp and of mental health issues in general. Now, I won't bore you with this paper, but it was really interesting. There was a lot about it that was interesting, and the statistics actually were the most interesting thing. I'll try to summarize it as best I can without giving you the statistics. That can be very boring, but I thought they really did this cleverly, and they did it with a small amount of participants. And when you only have a small amount of participants in research, you have a low power. You basically are going to have, you're going to have a stronger effect. You're going to have more of a change measured in order to say it was significant. So what they saw was a pretty noticeable, pretty major change in people's attitudes when they would watch, before they watched the videos and then after they watched the videos of Amber Heard, the mental health experts, who were talking about Amber Heard, and the mental health experts talking about Johnny Depp. And then they completed this instrument. This was also fun to me, this prejudice towards people with mental illness measure, which I didn't even know about. This didn't exist when I was in school, and I hadn't come across it. But this is a 4 area assessment of negative attitudes toward people with mental illness. And 3 of the attitudes were very significant. Feelings of fear and avoidance of people with mental illness, that was significant. Malevolence, which is unsympathetic attitudes towards people with mental illness, got much worse after they watched these experts talk about things. And unpredictability toward mental illness, or unfavorable attitudes toward people with mental illness, because of their inconsistency. They thought you couldn't predict them. And is this the one that would basically people poop the bed? Isn't this the trial? Oh yeah, I think it was.
It was her.
Yeah, I just can't comment on that. So the one area that wasn't significant was authoritarianism. And this was also interesting to me because basically this measures black and white or right-wing type thinking that predisposes people to prejudice. And what people basically, their thinking process before the assessment and their thinking process after the assessment was basically the same. Watching the people talk about mental health didn't really change any attitudes. So that was kind of interesting to me because it just represents that you can't change people's a tiger can't change its stripes that easily. And, there are some people who just have their attitudes. But overall, people's prejudice increased quite a bit. So, I wrote discussion. But so the problem was the unmediated availability of the trial online. They're thinking that just having this trial available with no kind of check or balance actually made things much worse. And watching mental health experts used to discredit the testimony, to tarnish their reputations, and to undermine the credibility is what really did the majority of the damage. So what do you guys think? No?
Well, I mean, I feel like the people watching it are either like identifying with some of the things that are being described from either side, which can really mess some things up if, they're using them to tarnish each other in that way. So any talk of the mental health issues is just bad. It's in everybody's eyes that are watching it, either side, it's bad, since they're using it as a weapon in that sense. So it kind of sucks. Just from that aspect.
I mean, I think also, I agree with you. And it's sad that society likes to watch these train wrecks happen. It's like we get our entertainment from other people's mental health or issues or...
I mean, because reality
their
TV is
troubles.
pretty much like
reality
that.
TV.
Yeah.
Which,
So-
that's a close burn for me, but yes, reality TV. Should mental health expert testimony be made publicly available? What do you guys think?
I mean, even like a trial like this, I mean, if I was in trial, I would not want the public to hear all the dirty laundry, whether it's true or not, because as long as it's being said, people will pick it up and run with it, you know?
Yeah. And it could affect your livelihood.
I mean, Johnny Depp didn't work.
And
It
I don't
tarnished
think she
his
didn't either.
image, you know?
You know, it can affect your livelihood. So I don't know if I'd want that out in public.
I think the interesting thing is that when you're on a jury, have you guys observed jury duty?
I've never had to serve.
Neither,
Knock
because
on wood.
I was in the military, so
What?
yeah.
Okay, when you're on a jury, let me just explain it to you.
Please.
When you're on a jury, you have to listen to everything. You can't just selectively listen to anything. I guess you could tune out, but you really try to listen to everything, because everything presented you have to consider to make your decision. So when you're watching a YouTube video, you can tune in and tune out. You can go backwards and forwards.
Right.
You can watch clips on TikTok. So it makes it much more salacious. So I have to say this study actually changed my attitude. And I thought, yeah, this study shows this is not a good idea, because it really tarnished these two people. It tarnished people's attitudes toward mental health.
Right.
And using therapists or experts as a weapon against another person. It does happen, especially in custody trials, but I don't know that it's a good idea to happen in public on YouTube.
And they use like different sorts of experts. It's not just like mental health experts. They'll use like medical experts, anything with dealing with the case.
We are
like,
considered medical. Yeah, but
well, yeah, I mean, but like doctor, like an actual.
thank you. Wow.
I hate you.
Wow.
That's what I mean.
An actual doctor.
Wow.
Or not a real doctor.
You know, are you my mother? Oh my God.
She's gonna get you for this one.
Oh, well, you know, she's still lamenting the fact that I didn't go to medical school. Okay.
But you did. Since you are
I went to grad school for psychology. Okay. Let's move on. Does the size of your student loan impact the size of your grades? Do you guys take out student loans?
I did.
I did too.
I was blessed that I didn't have to because of the military.
Right.
So they paid for my school.
Well,
but
you did serve.
I did, yeah. But I did because of this whole thing we were going to talk about. I kind of wished I would have gotten student loans. You know?
Well, let's talk about that. How were your grades? Not good?
I mean, towards the end, I picked it up.
Okay.
But in the beginning, I was having a good time.
Tony, more than 3.5?
I think it was 3.2.
Oh, that's about what I had. Yeah, that's about what I had. And it was interesting. By the grace of God, I got into several schools. So, but I did some work to back that truck up. I could talk about it. But bottom line, all three universities that I attended, I actually got some scholarships, and that got quite a bit, but I also had to take out loans to help pay tuition and books. And all three universities, I had to work at the same time. So I worked to pay rent, food expenses, all that. And did that affect my performance? Absolutely. God, there were times I didn't sleep. But let's talk about the problem in the United States. According to the Institute of College Access and Success, 56% of seniors, that's graduating seniors, from public and non-profit colleges the non-profit privates, that's like your Harvard, your Columbia, your, fill in the blank, Woodbury University here in Burbank, the small privates, 56% had student loan debt ranging from an average of $28,500 for bachelor's degree programs and $292,000 for a dental school program. Yeah. They go into significant debt. According to data from the United States Department of Education, 1 in every 5 borrowers defaulted before the COVID-19 pandemic. Before.
Wow.
So people always blame the pandemic, but 1 in 5 defaulted before. That's 20%. That is quite a bit. And that's because when you graduate school, you barely have any money. You're just doing your very best, and you have this significant student loan that you think you'll be able to pay back, but in the beginning, it can be very, very difficult.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's just kind of crazy because when we're that young, I don't think we can really think financially responsible about things where I'm like thinking about it, where I'm like, wow, they're doing a great job.
You are really ahead of this. You'll see why.
Oh, man, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, I'm impressed. You'll see why. The study, Department of Finance at the University of Central Florida, the Department of Finance and University of Central Florida, they did a study. They decided to look at, and this is another one that was done with no funding. So this is kind of interesting to me. They just say, we're going to do this study. So they studied the correlation between grades and student debt at a large public university in the United States. I could not tell which university they used. I'm assuming they used the University of Central Florida. I literally was trying to do that. I'm sure I could have if I looked long enough. I was going through the study and whatnot. Anyway, so they took 877 undergraduate students to participate in the study, and this was published in the Journal of Social Scientists. The study had 86% of the 877 students were under 25 years old. So this is really a typical population, half male, half female, just slightly more male. Most were juniors, 2/3 were juniors, so it's a good time in school to catch someone, when they've matriculated and they're kind of going through. 41% were working full or part-time at the time of the survey. I feel like I identify with these people. So it assessed the area of study, their GPA, the social and economic background, self-awareness, and understanding of reality. And the results showed that just over 40% had taken out a loan in order to be able to study, and that was certainly crucial to me. I'm very grateful for the loan programs. Over half were more than $10,000 in debt. That was certainly me. Study revealed students with debts had a significantly lower chance of receiving a GPA of 3.0 or better. Wow. That is wild. And guess who did the worst? Older students. This was a surprise to me because there's a stereotype about older students that they kind of have their stuff together a bit more.
But they're working full time.
But they're working full time,
yes.
And they might have kids, and they have other responsibilities.
Yeah.
So yes, the older students probably have quite a bit more against them. Interestingly enough. So let's talk about this. So the students with less than $10,000 debt had about an 8% lower chance of receiving a GPA over 3.5 than their debt-free fellow students. That may not sound like a lot, but it just basically is think of it like a 30% grade hill, that they're climbing up this hill. It's just harder to get. They can still get up there. It's just harder. But students with more than $10,000 debt had about a 14% lower chance. So this is like, we're getting up to a 40% grade. I mean, wow. It's really pushing, and this is getting really hard. So it's starting to get much harder, and they have a much harder time getting to that 3.5 or better. As of 2023, student debt in the United States is $1.7 trillion with a T, trillion dollars in federal and private loans. And we see some loan forgiveness programs. You hear a lot about them perhaps in the news, and it's very, very good. I'm excited for these people who are able to get this. Do you guys have negative opinions about the student forgiveness programs or positive opinions? I gave away mine.
I think it depends. I mean, I think it definitely the people by income brackets of parents. I don't know. I'm kind of conflicted. I think it's a good idea to not put people completely in debt to to get their life started. It's like having $100,000 wedding that you can't afford. I just don't feel of starting new already completely in debt. So yeah, but I don't know if it's necessarily fair for a lower income people to. I don't know. It's kind of up in the air because you hear both sides.
No, I think you're expressing what a lot of people go through, and at first I had to say, God, I didn't get that, but then I had to think, but if I were their age, I would have wanted it.
I would have definitely wanted it.
For sure,
because
I would have.
It was so hard for me, especially in the beginning, and there were so many times, like going without, like food, or or not being able to buy gas because you're having to pay your student loan, and really living a substandard way. So it was always a little bit tough.
Yeah.
So
I just think it's one of those things that. Education should be more affordable and not, like I said. I mean, I can under specialized, like doctors and lawyers and stuff like that, but more like, business management. I don't.
It just seems like a pyramid scheme at this point, honestly.
Well, it's because when I was in school, getting a bachelor's degree almost guaranteed you a job.
Was huge, yeah.
Now, a bachelor's degree really doesn't guarantee you nothing. Even a master's degree really doesn't guarantee you're going to.
Nothing guarantees you anything. It seems like but yes, getting a degree is helpful, and it's certainly people do much better who have degrees. We can look statistically, but nothing's a guarantee. It's true. This is more. The 1.7 trillion is more than double the debt from the last 2 decades, and the average student loan now is approximately $40,000. Still less than what I had.
Money.
So part of the problem was that 7 out of the 10 thought they were better or much better than their fellow students at managing money. And you kind of said that, Brian, didn't you? Nearly half had unrealistically high expectation of what their starting salary would be.
Me. That would be me.
But only 20%, only 2 in 10, 20% answered. They had 4 questions. They had a 4-question financial quiz. Again, I tried to find this in the study, and I couldn't find the 4 questions, but probably if I did more digging, we'd find out, because I would put it to you guys. It's kind of funny, but the questions were around money, interest, and finance, and only 20% got either 3 or 4 of them right.
Wow.
So most of them got those. They missed at least 2 on that quiz. 2 out of 4. That's 50%. That is not passing. This is like a driving study. I think Brian and I talked about this once, because most people, about 80%, consider themselves better than average drivers. Yeah, you guys both consider yourselves better than average.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's good for you. You fit right into the 80% very neatly.
I'm amazing.
This talks about a cognitive bias. This was not in the paper, but had to note this. This talked about it illustrates a cognitive bias known as the better than average effect. The better than average effect is a cognitive bias that describes a person's tendency to evaluate their own abilities, attributes, and personality traits as better than those of their average peers. So we all think we're kind of hot, you know?
Sometimes I'm like, wow, should I be doing this professionally?
What's really interesting to me is that I didn't include this with the study, but there was another study I found, anyway, I'm talking about it anyway, that basically said that when you put people who view themselves as average with people who have an inflated view of themselves, have the better than average effect, it's infectious. Not that it makes the other person feel more average, it makes both of them feel like they're better than average. So this effect is like a little bit of a virus going around. We're all thinking we're hot shit, but maybe we're just average.
I've had that reality check actually once where I was like, wow, when I was around everybody else that was better than everybody, I was like, oh, I'm in the middle here. Got it.
So I like this. I found this quote. It was in one of the articles, and I put it in the YouTube. It'll be in the YouTube page. Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, currently the third richest man in the world. I had to look it up. Sometimes he's the richest. Sometimes he's, who knows? He's the third. Jeff Bezos doesn't see smart people as those who are often right. Instead, he thinks the smartest people admit they are wrong and change their opinions often. According to Bezos, this is a quote, "The smartest people are constantly revising their understanding, reconsidering the problem they thought they'd already solved, and they're open to new points of view, new information, new ideas, contradictions, and challenges to their own way of thinking." And avoiding the better than average effect is important, and embracing our genuine intellectual humility, and it pays off in two ways. The more willing you are to entertain the possibility of being wrong, the better the choices you are making. Oh. So basically, if you can reconsider, you'll actually get smarter, and then if you'll make a better choice. And this is kind of this cognitive bias, this alludes to another cognitive bias of mine. I'm going to go to, we don't have time, but I could go down this road quite a bit, but it basically illustrate that sometimes the least intelligent people actually think they're the most intelligent, but the most intelligent people but the most intelligent people know they don't know everything, because they're able to see that, I don't have all the answers. But if you're not very intelligent,
I would have never expected him to say that. That's so down to earth
so intelligent.
Of him.
Right.
Well, it's like Henry Ford. Henry Ford didn't know how to build a car and do all that stuff. He hired all the best people. Mm-hmm. And Lincoln was so smart in the way he handled things, and his team of rivals. He wanted contradictory opinions so that he could talk about and look at things. So we look at these great leaders, and they have definitely a method that works very well. What?
No, I wasn't going to say anything about it.
Well, I mean, we could look at some of the dark sides of certainly Henry Ford. But
yeah, right.
Maybe that's what you were thinking. But shame on me. Anyway, let's talk about another politician. Well, he wasn't a politician, but he certainly was part of his dark side. But let's talk about in the news, psychology in the news, South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem and her dog Cricket. I'll go through this very quickly. Politicians and dog experts are criticizing Kristi Noem after she wrote a new book and she put in a passage about killing a rambunctious puppy. Actually, the dog was about 14 months old. So, I don't know, was that a teen puppy or is that a full adult at that point? I don't know.
No, that's still a puppy.
It's still a puppy.
Yeah.
Experts who work with hunting dogs like Noem's said she should have trained, not killed the pup, or found other options if the dog was indeed out of control, as she alleges. Noem had tried to reframe the story from 2 decades ago as an example of her willingness to make tough decisions. She wrote on social media that the 14-month-old wire-haired terrier named Cricket had shown aggressive behavior by biting. That, for those at home, we just put up a picture of Kristi Noem and poor little Cricket. Oh, it's really kind of a painful story. Joan Payton, who is the German Wire-Haired Pointer Club of America, she's the president, said, and this is a quote from her, "I'm not sure which thing was stupider, the fact that she murdered her dog or the fact that she was stupid enough to publish it in the book." Which I thought this was a pretty good point.
Yeah.
She did it to seem tough. It made her appear intolerant of difference and overtly cruel. That's the effect it had. And many labeled her decision, in fact, from both sides of the aisle. She's a Republican. She was vying for the Republican VP slot. But both sides of the aisle are saying her decision to publish the story is political suicide. But in psychology, we would call this poor judgment. And you may think, poor judgment, that's sort of a light tap on the back of the hand. It's actually a very big burn in psychology. It's one thing you don't want to have when you're taking a test, like a neuropsych test or something like that, is to be labeled having poor judgment. It's kind of saying you can't make decisions for yourself very well.
Well, wouldn't you put her in the same place that her pup was? As if the pup was biting or being aggressive and out of control, she just displayed the same actions that the pup would. So in that case,
it's a rather good point.
what is someone else to do?
I mean,
that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it's a rather good point. Now, psychology can't really tell us much unless we know about her personality. I have my suspicions. They're not good. But it does tell us something about us. And I was kind of impressed with this. The chorus about this was unanimous. And I was surprised it came from both sides of the aisle. And it was pretty unanimous. I didn't really hear anyone, even people who are like, yeah, sometimes it happens. Even those people said, she should have taken a different route. There were other things that could have been done. Of course, the dog could have been given away. It could have been trained. She could have accepted it just being who it was. And it kind of brought up another point, which is now it's Holocaust Remembrance Day. And I'm not trying to liken these two things, but it struck me today was this Holocaust Remembrance Day. And one of the worst examples of intolerance in history, of course, killing 6 million Jews in the Holocaust, and homosexuals, the disabled, gypsies or Roma people, their survivors, the rescuers, I mean, all the helpers. It was really a horrible, horrible, one of the worst in our entire history. And this was an example of a society that bought into intolerance, or at least was tolerant of intolerance. And so it really brought up this thing a patient shared with me, and if I can just go into this really quickly, which was called the paradox of intolerance. And I was rather excited to find out about this. I had not heard about it. It's not psychology, it's from philosophy, but it parallels something in psychology very well. The paradox of intolerance is basically that it's a philosophical concept by Karl Popper, and it basically says that the more you cannot tolerate intolerance, because if you tolerate intolerance, it'll eventually bite you in the butt. I put up a cartoon for those who happen to be looking at home. It's basically, should a tolerant society tolerate intolerance? And boy, that is a tongue twister. And it's basically somebody who's intolerant carrying a tiki torch. No, I think this was done before that old famous tiki torch thing, so I guess it's been done. Somebody having a Nazi symbol and carrying a tiki torch. And basically the answer is no, that when you tolerate intolerance, you're actually going to eventually be done in yourself. And it's really quite shocking, the whole thing. So this kind of parallels a thing in psychology called absolutistic beliefs. Absolutistic beliefs are dogmatic, inflexible, illogical beliefs that are often associated with a sense of righteousness and indignation. We all know these people. They have all the answers. They are absolutely right, and everyone else is wrong, and they know the right way the world should be, and that's that. But they can help people. They do assist people in a kind of a positive way, which may not seem like it at first. They can help you escape the reality of your situation psychologically by claiming it should be different. However, this can lead people to constantly encounter similar problems in the long term. Basically, they keep their cycle of problem going. Some examples, these are considered irrational beliefs. And let's talk about some irrational beliefs. You should be different than you are. Life should be different than it is. I should be different than I am. I've done that one a lot. We've all done these. And this illustration of this concept first came from a man named Albert Ellis, who I studied with in New York City. I did a fellowship there. So I was very privileged to have worked with him before he passed. I was one of several fellows. It wasn't just he and I hanging out in a room, but it was really a profound learning experience, one that changed my life. But let's talk about irrational belief. Other ones, we might have done these. You might not have identified those, but you're bound to get hurt in a relationship. That's actually irrational, and we could talk about why. There is a loser in every fight, so avoid fights at all costs. Or all people are out for number one, and you'll always be number two no matter what. And there's only one way of doing things, And also the famous one, life should be fair. Boy, that is one we can all know that isn't true. What can this teach us? The absolutistic, black and white, all or nothing, good and bad beliefs can actually cause harm. They seem to protect us, but they can cause harm. And the beliefs can fuel unhappiness and rage and harm and inaction. And we all benefit from a society from tolerating each other's differences, but that doesn't mean tolerating people who are intolerant of differences. Is that a bit of a tongue twister there? A little bit? Yeah. It means that if somebody's going around hating, and if somebody's harming, hurting, and including Governor, Kristi Noem hurting her dog, it's okay for us to say that's wrong and that's not cool.
And that seems to be happening a lot, like from all angles, everywhere. There just seems to be a lot of hate just flowing.
There is a lot of hate, and people are taking sides. And I think, and I know I'm not a lone voice out here in the wilderness, but I do get frustrated that I hear about it so much, because intolerance is a problem. It doesn't mean to be tolerant. You have to go, oh no, that's cool. It does mean to be tolerant. You look for understanding, you look for sympathy, and you look for connection. And this comes from one of the oldest forms of cognitive behavioral therapy, which is called rational motive behavior therapy, or from Albert Ellis, but it comes from a philosophy that goes way before that. So what about trouble in the world? When you were just talking about kind of what's going on in the world, you don't have to tolerate intolerance in the world. You can do things. You can work against the cause. You can work toward a cause, or you can work against the cause. You could protest. You can stand up for other people. You can make your voice heard. But don't do and say things that will harm other people. Don't express intolerance. It only harms others. And so bringing it all the way back, Martin Luther King Jr., Principles of Nonviolent Protest. Anyway, I could go into my history with this, but brilliant. Beyond brilliant, man. But anyway, his principles, there are many, but first, one can resist evil without resorting to violence. Secondly, nonviolence seeks to win friendship and understanding of the opponent, not to humiliate him. And third, evil itself, not the people committing the acts, should be opposed. And there's a brilliance to that I can't even go into, but being able to look at the person separate from the acts they do is truly profound. He actually has a quote that I love, is darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that.
Wow, that's deep. Thanks for that.
It is deep. Well, that wraps up the show for today. It was a big one today, even though we just stayed on a few different stories. But a reminder to like, subscribe, and to give us 5 stars if you can on whatever app or whatever, if you're on YouTube, whatever. Also, if you have questions or topics you'd like us to recover, I'm going to have to recover right after this. Hit me up on the socials at Ask Dr. Greg. This is Dr. Greg, Brian, and Tony.
Yay!
Hey, Tony. This is bidding you all farewell. Until next time, be present, be flexible, and be kind.